today we are continuing with lecture number 9. I will be starting with the rūpa, because rūpa is more obvious to understand in terms of ultimate realities than chittas, cetasikas, and then we go to the conditionality. So today 2 lectures will be regarding the rūpa of the Theravada tradition. So it's normally translated as corporeality or matter. So the chapter will be number 2. So the paragraphs will begin at 2.1, 2.2 and so on. So last lecture was ultimacy was number 1. So likewise the numbering will happen according to the lecture, according to the chapters. So the first thing that we should know about the rūpa explained in the Theravada tradition is they are explained as certain, actually it is the most conspicuous or distinct ultimate reality among the group of paramattha dhammas. Because chitta is something which is immaterial, which doesn't have any form, which is normally a sort of a force or a mental quality, and mental concomitants, it means the cetasikas are also associated with them, and the rūpa it becomes very distinct to us. So it is in meditation even, mostly it is instructed to focus upon rūpa first because it's easy to understand. So we will start with the rūpa. In the 2.1 paragraph, we mentioned that among the paramattha dhammas, the most obvious and conspicuous realities are called rūpa. These realities are just intrinsic nature's characteristics like hardness, cohesion, tejo, heat, pushing and bloating nature, and color, sound and so forth. So notwithstanding these realities are natures, but when they come together, what happens is they happen to manifest certain physical attributes of things. So when they are together, we understand them as things like which consumes a space and also which has a mass. That is the nature of the rūpas. Even the mentalities, they come together in clusters where they don't manifest such kinds of physical attributes. So that is the very basic distinct between chitta and rūpa, mentality and materiality. Right? Materiality. That's the first point. So in the Adhidhamma point of view of Theravadins, there are 28 types of rūpas. Among the 28, 18 are concretely produced, and the last 10 in the list are normally, even though they are considered rūpas, but we don't consider them as paramattha dhammas. In the lecture number 1, which it was mentioned, if you go to the page number 2, so there is a list of rūpas from 28 rūpas, like 2.21, 2.22, so forth. In the end, at the end of the list, it's mentioned, however, the last 10 rūpas, anippana rūpas, are not actual paramattha dhammas. We mentioned in the lecture number 1. So the back reference is given 1.59. Right? So I also recommend you to bring the previous handout because sometimes I'll be referring to the previous lectures. Right? So you can refer to that because it's explained in the previous lecture. So then we come into the how rūpa is explained in the Buddhist teachings. So according to the Theravada tradition, we call it as the intrinsic natures, intrinsic characteristics. So when we analyze the canon, like Tipitaka, you find there are 3 ways the rūpa has been explained. Right? 3 ways. You can find from 3.1, 3.2, 3.3. First thing is as things with abundant material qualities, like hair, flesh and so forth, bones and so forth, like things. And sometimes as liquids, like blood, pus or bile and so forth. And sometimes rūpa is explained as things which have specific unique qualities. I'll be explaining them now. So it's like, for example, when we take the eye. Eye normally can be explained in 2 ways. So in mostly Buddha would explain it like the physical eye that we have. But when we explain the physical eye, still it has a very intrinsic, unique quality, which is the sensitivity for the color. So that's why the Buddha could name it as eye, not as the ear. Right? So that is the second way. Third way is mere material qualities. All three ways of explanations we can find in the canon. So if you go to the 3.1, 3.1 means, for example, if you go into the suttas like Dhatu Vibhanga, we find Buddha explained like Patavi as hair, flesh, heat, and so forth. Right? And he explains apo as blood, then bile, so forth. So then we go to vayu. Vayu as the air which flows up, which flows down, and so forth. There are many, detailed explanations on it. So first we explained that they are just intrinsic natures. I detailedly explained about this matter, about this point in the lecture number 1, in the ultimate reality. That ultimate realities are just natures. So when we say Patavi, we normally explain it as hardness. And also we explain there is no duality between the reality and the quality. Quality itself is the reality itself is the quality. Hardness itself is the Patavi itself is the hardness. Same applies with all the realities. That is how it is explained as ultimate reality. They are not things, they are just natures. But when you go to suttas, you find like Patavi explained as air, flesh, teeth, apo as bile, blood, and vayu as air which flows up, down, and so forth. Right? This is also one way of explaining the realities. So when Buddha mentioned that hair is Patavi, flesh is Patavi, blood and bile are apo, and so forth. Right? So forth. So what is the reason for him to make this classification? That is the most important point. So why he mentioned 20 parts? Normally in suttas we find 19, except the Mattadunga, the brain. So then 12 parts for apo and 6 for vayu. If you take, these are just material things that he was referring to. So what is the criterion behind him classifying into groups? So when we classify something into groups, there should be a common characteristic for the classification. So what is the common characteristic for these physical entities to be considered as Patavi? Because the hardness. Because hardness is distinct in these body parts. So therefore he could classify them as Patavi. And the some body parts, like body parts means these liquids which are found in the body, the liquidity is the distinct element. So therefore, and in these bio elements, the pushing nature or moving nature, bloating nature is more distinct. So therefore, even they are explained as things. What we have to understand is, what is the criterion behind this classification? It is the qualities, the material qualities. So therefore, even though they are mentioned as things, but still the Buddha has not gone beyond, not avoided the, material qualities which are unique to them. So then the next point is number 2, 3.2. 3.2 is examples for example, when he divide the rūpa as eye, like chakku, ear, sota, then nose as gana. In some explanations, the commentary also explained, when eye is mentioned, he is referring to the physical eye, which is which is made out of flesh and certain parts like sinews and all. So when he is referring as chakku, he is referring to this physical eye. When he refers to the sota, he is referring to this physical ear. So still, what is the criterion behind him noting something as eye and noting something as ear? Eye is because if you find the suttas, you find chakku and rūpa, when they come together, chakku vijnana arises. So what is the coming together? Eye is sensitive to the rūpa. So therefore, even it is mentioned as a physical thing. Even it is mentioned as a physical thing, but still there is a peculiar or unique characteristic, unique attribute or quality that is only unique to this chakku, which is not unique to sota. That is the sensitivity or sensitiveness to the rūpa. Here we have the sensitiveness of the sensitiveness to the sound. Therefore, even in these classifications, chakku, sota, gana, juha, kaya, he was referring to some unique attributes or material qualities that these organs possess. So therefore, in the second classification also, he made the division, made classifications based on certain material attributes, characteristics, which are the sensitivities to the respective sense objects. So here the classification happens based on the abundance. Abundant means if hardness is more in a certain physical part, he named it as patavi. If some liquidity is abandoned in a certain part of the body, he called it as apo. Here, it's not the abandonness. Because since if you take the physical eye, you normally do it. So there is a certain sensitivity around here. The sensitivity is not the abundant part. Here we get the hardness as the abundant part. So why he named this? Why instead of naming this physical as eye as patavi, why did he call it chakku? Because of this unique characteristic of sensitivity. So therefore, another way of classifying the rupas is found because of certain organs contain some peculiar or unique material attributes like sensitivities and so forth. Then we come to the third way of explanation. Sometimes he has named the rupa as mere material qualities, just material qualities. How do we know about this point? Because if you go into the classification of dhatu and ayatana, you find that the Buddha's main intention was to define the rupa based on, how to say, characteristics, material attributes. How do we understand this? In dhatu and ayatana, we have 18 dhatus. Ayatana have 12. In 18 dhatus, we have 10 and 10 separate dhatus for rupa and also part of the dhamma dhatu. In the ayatana also, we have 10 separate ayatanas for rupa and a part of the dhamma ayatana. So if we take just a simple example of rūpa dhatu and potthapa dhatu. So in ayatana also we have rūpa ayatana and potthapa ayatana, right? Potthapa dhatu and rūpa dhatu. For example, if we take the how to say flesh, if we take the flesh, in this flesh we can find both these dhatus. Why do I say? Because this classification is not based on the four elements. This classification is based on a different aspect. So here rūpa dhatu means something which is visible to the eye. Potthapa dhatu means something which can be felt by the body, touched by the body. If you take the flesh, for example, if this part of the flesh, if you take this as the flesh, this flesh can be seen. At the same time, this flesh can be felt. So in the same object, we can find the two dhatus. But in the classification of four elements, he would just call this the patavi, and he would not call this apo because of the abandoned nature. But when he comes to the dhatu classification, we can say, because this also is visible to the eye, whenever we observe it through eye, we can call it rūpa dhatu. At the same time, if we touch it, we can call it potthapa dhatu. So in this explanation, if you go into the classification of dhatu, his main purpose, main aim was to focus on the physical attribute, not as things. So when we analyze flesh in terms of dhatu, we find the mere color is rūpa dhatu, and what we feel when we touch in the tangible quality is the potthapa dhatu. Right? So therefore, when we come to dhatu and ayatana, we find the mere material natures was the main thing for his division. Right? So that's why I mentioned when we study the canon, we find three ways that the rūpa has been explained by the Buddha. If I repeat again, as things with abundant material qualities, as things which have specific unique qualities like eye, ear, nose and so forth, and as mere material qualities in the classification of ayatana and dhatu. At the end of this paragraph, we mentioned, thus, even though there are three types of classifications, in all these classifications, the main why do we group it as patavi? Why do we group it as apo? Or why do we name something as chakku? And because of the certain material qualities. So thus, in bold letters where I mentioned that the material attribute of verities are the foremost in explaining the rūpa. Right? So this is one explanation how we can find the rūpa in the Buddhist canon. Right? Buddhist canon. The first thing we want to explain is rūpa is something that manifests certain physical attributes, and it is quite grosser or very obvious than the nama, and it is been explained in the canon in three ways, like based on as things which has abundant qualities, as things which has unique qualities, not the abandoned nature in the case of chakku, sota and gana, and then as mere material attributes as in the case of dhatu and ayatana. Right? So then we go into the next one, 2.4 paragraph. 2.4. These material realities can be empirically observed. So last time we mentioned that in the last lecture, if a reality to be called paramatha, one of these characteristics is it is empirically observable, empirically knowable. Their intrinsic characteristics and functions can be known through intellectual analysis. Hence, they are ultimate natures. So they can be empirically observable. So this paragraph says an example. How do we experience the material attributes, these qualities in practical life? For example, if we take the car, the example is given as the vehicle. We take a vehicle, take it like this vehicle. In this vehicle, we consider it as an object or a thing. In this object consumes a certain range of space. In this whole space which is consumed, there is a hardness which exists around this whole space the car consumes. So that's why if we touch that area, we can feel it. And also there is a certain kind of a temperature which exists within that area. So that is the heat we call. So that can also be felt. At the same time, this heat and hardness doesn't get scattered in the air. They remain in a certain position. The reason is there's a certain kind of a bonding force which makes them to be in that area. So that is also something which can be known through intellectual understanding. At the same time, these qualities of hardness and heat are spread in a certain area. They are not contracted into one single point. They spread in a certain area like they are being pushed away. So therefore, it's not the pushing away doesn't mean the inside air. What I want to say is if we take the metal, it consumes the space. So it means the attributes like the hardness has been pushed into the outside, so it starts to exist in a certain area. So I'll be explaining this in the next paragraph about the rūpakalāpa. So here in this area we can feel a hardness, we can know about the temperature of a heat in which indicates through a temperature, and also we can understand about the bonding nature, bonding force, and a pushing force. At the same time, another few qualities can be observable. We all see a color. Color is something that is felt through our eye. And also we can know about the smell, taste. If someone, taste this, put this part in his tongue, he will have a certain taste. We can smell a smell. And also there is a certain nutriment. That's why certain creatures can eat this and sustain. So therefore, another four attributes like color, smell, taste, and nutriment can also be seen in this object we call the car. So instead of the car, when we keep on focusing on these attributes like hardness, cohesion, heat, the pushing nature, the color, smell, taste, and the nutriment, we find that the idea of car will disappear and we'll understand there are only just 8 elements. So this is how the elements can be empirically known. So this is not an imagination. This color is not an imagination. Color is something that you directly perceive through the eye, through the mind. Hardness, that is something that you can directly experience through the body. So another thing that we mentioned about the Theravadian tradition. Theravadian tradition always, most of the cases, goes to what we experience. It accepts what we experience through our sense doors. It doesn't go into sort of imagined philosophical notions. If something can be experienced, known, heard, felt, we consider it as ultimate reality. There is no such secondary, tertiary steps to understand reality. That's why in the first lecture I directly mentioned all these ultimate realities are experienced by every living being. Even animals sees the color. Some animals may not see, be blind color blind, but still they see a visible object. Even they see it in a black and white way, but still they see something. That visibility of the rūpa is still there. So therefore, in Theravada tradition, when we want to understand the ultimate realities, we don't go into imaginations. We don't ignore our own experience. We consider what we experience do exist. It's not like what we experience is not an imagination or illusion of the mind. It's something what is very simple. So therefore, in the Theravada tradition, if this car is felt as hardness is the ultimate reality. when we can feel a heat or a temperature, it is an ultimate reality. So what I want to say is it's something very easy to understand. It's only a matter of fact that we always focus or give attention to these ultimate realities. So that's how we know the material things, material attributes can be empirically known. Hence, they are ultimate realities or Paramattha Dhammas. Then we come to 2.5. Rūpas are irreducible elements, hence are called Paramattha Dhammas. If you remember the previous lecture, we explained about few characteristics of Paramattha Dhammas. There are four ways to judge whether reality is ultimate or not. It means it can be observed. It's unique and universal characteristics can be observable, parinya. If something can be dispelled, something can be removed, pahana kicca. Something can be developed or something can be attained. If something is an ultimate reality, it should fit to any of these functions. And also ultimate realities, Paramattha Dhammas, in the topic of Paramattha Dhammas, because under the topic of ultimacy we talk about few ultimate natures like Paramattha Dhamma, Anupanna Dhamma and so forth. In the Paramattha Dhamma part, we discussed that Paramattha Dhammas are the irreducible elements of the existence. It means they cannot be further divided. They cannot be further divided. So Rūpa also, when we say Paramattha Dhammas, they are also irreducible elements. So it's very important to understand how they are irreducible, right? How they are irreducible. So if we take the example of a car again, a vehicle. This vehicle we normally consider as a thing. So in the previous example, previous paragraph, we mentioned that instead of a vehicle, we can experience some sort of 8 elements here. Sort of 8 elements. So then this vehicle, if we make it to intellectual analysis, if we bring this into intellectual analysis, we find there are only parts or spare parts of the vehicle. There are vehicle is something which is a constitution of parts. It's not one thing. So, for example, it has wheels, it has a metal body, and also cushion, a steering wheel, an engine, or some rubber parts and so forth. So when they all come together, we address it as a vehicle. So when we come to intellectual analysis, when we divide the actual parts of the vehicle, the idea of vehicle will disappear. So when we go into analysis, this idea of vehicle disappears, so we consider it as a concept formulated in our mind. When the parts are assembled in a certain manner, we name it or we consider it as something vehicle in which we can travel. So the vehicle is a construction in our mind. So then the question comes, these parts, when they are assembled, is a vehicle created in the nature? No. For example, when the parts are removed or taken apart, the idea of vehicle disappears. Then some may think when these parts are put together, is a vehicle constructed? No, still not. Or it's only the parts are remaining. Parts remaining in a certain manner. So if we keep it in a one manner, we call it a car. But the same parts, if we keep it in a different manner, we may call it a van or a bike. So actually the parts are there. So the idea of a car or a vehicle or something like a van or bike is just an idea we get observing how they are kept or how they are kept in the space, so how they are assembled. So that's how we get the idea of vehicle. So vehicle is not something which get formed or which is formulated by the part. It's something that we formulate in our mind. So then some may ask the question, so it is in Theravadian tradition, do we consider about, because previously I mentioned about we don't construct. Yeah, we construct the ideas of concepts. But what we basically or primary experience in the ultimate realities. So in the primary level, all the beings according to the tradition experience the ultimate level. But thing is, when the process goes on mentally, we create new ideas. These are called concepts. So concepts are the secondary things. The primary things are the ultimate realities. So ka is something that we create in our mind, looking at the way, the manner these parts are assembled. Then we can still, each and every part can be subject to further analysis. For example, if we take the metal body, So we can put it into small parts because we know it's a constitution of small things. But because of the modern scientific knowledge is very clear, as metal is something, is a constitution of atoms or constitution of small particles. So in the same way, we can analyze the cushion of the seats, or we can analyze the engine, we can analyze the tires, rubbers and metal parts. All these things we can bring into further analysis. So when we analyze them further, the ideas of a metal body, ideas of a tire, ideas of a seat will disappear, and we come to small particles which has the physical attributes. So when it comes to small particles, you cannot call a small particle a seat. When the particles are come together, it's just a gathering of particles. It's not a seat. So when the particles are come together, it's just a gathering of particles, not a tire. So as it was the same, as we could not say the gathering of body parts is not a vehicle. The same manner, gathering of particles cannot be an engine, cannot be a seat, or cannot be a tire. So then the next point is, some may argue then is the all the particles, so all the body parts are they are gathering. Is it called a car? If they are gathering, it's called a car. Whatever the manner they are kept, they should be called a vehicle. Because if the parts are kept in when they are kept in a certain manner, we can call it a vehicle. When they are put into a casual bundle, we never call it a vehicle. So therefore, vehicle is not constructed by the gathering of parts. It is something that we create in our mind, looking at the manner it is assembled. The same way, when the particles are come together, doesn't create anything, only the particles remain close to each other. So in this intellectual analysis, there are two rules that normally we follow. It means one thing, if it is a real one thing, it cannot be put into two. If something can be put into two, it was already two things. So this is the rule in the intellectual analysis in Theravada tradition. I'll repeat again. If something is actually a one, it cannot be put into two. If something can be put into two, means it was already two things. Then the next thing is, even two things come together, it never creates one thing. It's just the gathering of two things. It means when the parts are come together, it never creates one thing called a car. It's just an assemble of parts, body parts. In the same way, when the small particles come together, it doesn't create something called a seat or something called a tire. It's just a gathering of small particles. So in this way, when we keep on analyzing and intellectually analyzing the material thing, we come into a level of the smallest, tiniest particle. With this comes with the intellectual analysis, the tiniest particle, which cannot be further divided in terms of physically, which cannot be further divided. So in our tradition, we call it, Theravada tradition, we call it a rūpakalāpa. Rūpakalāpa means the reality, the smallest particle, tiniest particle, which cannot be further divided. So this idea of particle comes with the logical investigation. Right? It's logical investigation. Because in Suttas, Buddha mentioned about a space element. Space element means which divides the four great elements in our body. So when these four great elements, which are called the Patavi, Apo, Tejo, which were explained as hair, flesh, bones and so forth, and these parts can also be divided into small particles, and they knew, in ancient time they knew there were gaps between these small particles, which is also proven today in scientific experiments. So these particles, the paramanus we call, the small particles, which can be, if we go into further analysis, we come to the smallest, tiniest element in the Dhamma. It is in the tradition. It is called the rūpakalāpa. So these rūpakalāpas, sometimes they are touching, stick together. Most of the time they remain separately. There are two ways the literature explains. So this tiniest rūpakalāpa, cluster of rūpa, according to the Theravadins, even though this cannot be divided further physically, this can be divided intellectually. This can be divided into qualities. So, in the process of intellectual analysis, starting from a thing that we experience, we put it into small pieces, and each piece was put into small particles. So, likewise, we come into the tiniest particle, which cannot be further divided physically anymore. So, Up to here, we were coming into particles into pieces into sub-pieces, sub-pieces into particles, particles into sub-particles. So likewise, always we are dealing with things which consumes a space. When we come to the tiniest thing that consumes a space and act as a thing, Theravadians suggest that this can also be divided, but not physically, intellectually, into qualities. So this tiniest particle is a gathering of few qualities. That was the idea. It's a gathering of few qualities. So this tiniest particle they call a rūpakalāpa. If you go to the page number 4, the topic says rūpakalāpa, tiniest unit of material qualities. Tiniest unit of material qualities. For instance, let us assume a rūpakalāpa to be of round shape. Nothing is mentioned about its shape. So if we just assume, so just give it just a mark to show a rūpakalāpa. Right? It's not the way it is explained. Just we assume to explain how the elements exist there. So as shown in the above picture, the area of space a rūpakalāpa consumes is the area 4 basic material qualities spread over. Right? There are 4 material qualities. We already know that. If you I also forgot to explain in the beginning. If you go to the page number 1, sorry for that. If you go to page number 1, you find that 28 rūpas. So they are grouped into two groups, 4 great elements and 24 derived elements. 24 derived. 4 great elements is the Patavi, Apo, Tejo, Vayu. Hardness, Apo, Patavi. Apo is cohesion and liquidity. Right? There are 2 sorts of qualities there. Tejo, heat and coldness. Vayu, pushing or blotting nature. Please keep a mark on this Apo. Apo is the cohesion and also liquidity. There's a liquid quality in Apo. I'll be using this quality to explain the rūpakalāpa. Right? So then derived elements, they in the text it says upadaya. Upadaya means normally we consider derived. Derived means they are depending. Actually the word is better to say depending on the great elements. Right? Depending on the great elements. So there are 24 great elements that depend on the Mahabhuta. We call the 4 great elements. Among these 24, the last 10 we call Anipanna Rūpa, which are not ultimate realities. The first 14 are concretely produced ultimate realities. First 14 up to Oja. If you go to 2.218, so 2.25 to 2.18 are the concretely produced Upadaya Rūpa. From 2.19 to 2.28 is the Anipanna Rūpa, right? So when I say always the basic qualities of material, we are referring to the 4 great elements, Mahabhuta. I'm referring to 4 great elements when we say the primary elements of corporeality, right? So we go back to the page number 4. Page number 4. So if we assume that rūpakalāpa is sort of a round element, so according to the literature, what does this mean? Rūpakalāpa means, if you take this as this shape, in this area of the space, there exists a hardness. Hardness and the 4 great elements exist in this space, which is consumed by the rūpakalāpa. So the main elements, we can start with the hardness and the heat. There's a hardness, so it can be felt, it can be touched, and there's a heat around this area. This heat and hardness doesn't get scattered in the air. It is confined to a certain area because there is a certain kind of a force which keeps them there. We call it the cohesion or the Apo. So then the Apo, because it holds into one area, so it doesn't, if only Apo is present, what happens? This hardness and heat can get contracted or shrink into one point. To stop that, there is a pushing nature outwards. So this pushing nature or bloating nature is called the Vayu. So therefore what happens? This hardness and cohesion, hardness and heat are kept in one area, confined to an area because of the cohesion, and they are pushed away, pushed back to outwards because of the Vayu. So because of Apo, it doesn't get scattered, but because of Vayu, it doesn't shrink into one area. So therefore, with these two forces, what happens? Patavi and Tejo, the heat and the hardness, starts to exist in a certain area. Why do they exist in a certain area? Because why they come to a certain shape? Because they don't get scattered or blast or scattered away, and they don't shrink into one point, or they just doesn't get collapsed. So these two forces in the opposite directions is the reason for the area, for the, for the space, rūpa to consume a certain space. So then the question comes, either two forces should be equal. It's not really necessary, because the rūpakalāpa is has a very extreme short lifespan. So even they are not balanced 100% upon each other, still it can exist momentarily. So therefore, some rūpakalāpas may contain excessive vayu, some may contain excessive apo, and also some may contain hardness or heat excessively. So there are different percentages of these four great elements in these different rūpakalāpas. So this is the basic explanation why. So when the four great elements come together, because of these, especially because of apo and vayu, they start to happen in a certain area. So that is what is explained in the first paragraph under rūpakalāpa. The second paragraph says the rūpakalāpas occur in generations. The next point. Rūpakalāpas occur in generations. So if this is a rūpakalāpa, this rūpakalāpa has a lifespan. It arises and passes away. It is origin, arising and passing away. During its existing period, what happened? Because of this rūpakalāpa, another rūpakalāpa arises. I'll be discussing this point detailedly in the lecture for causality. According to Buddhist tradition, things happened out of nothing. Out of nothing means there was no rūpa, it starts to happen. But we don't say it happened without causes. The cause was this rūpakalāpa. It didn't come from that rūpakalāpa. It's like there's rūpakalāpa here, based of this, because of this, another rūpakalāpa suddenly happened. This is something which is very difficult to explain. So anyway, that is how in Buddhist teaching is explained. Ahutva sambodhi, it was not there, but it suddenly happened because of a certain cause, right? Because of a certain cause. So this rūpakalāpa, before it's passing away, it produces another rūpakalāpa. So when it passes, this rūpakalāpa can sustain for another case. So this rūpa will produce another rūpa. So likewise, the rūpakalāpa remains in generations. In the next lecture, we study the chitta. Chitta's generation is different. Chitta generation is, after one chitta arises and passes away, the next chitta happens to arise. So there is always continue one after another generation in chitta. But in rūpa it's different. It's like the human generation. Human generation civilization. Children has to be born before the parents die. So while the parents are alive, they give birth to children. So rūpakalāpa is like human generation. Chitta is different. Chitta is the first chitta has to pass away, then the second chitta happens. So these two, normally we say nama rūpa happen in generations, they have two different characteristics, two different qualities. So rūpakalāpa happen in generation. This is also very important for our further explanations. Then the next one is, the one line says, apo also have a liquid quality. This is called liquidity. Normally it's not addressed in that way. You find when you go into the literature, you find its liquid quality is also discussed in the literature. Why do I say so? Because the thing is, if you go to the third paragraph says how the rūpakalāpa is stable. How the rūpakalāpa in generation wise is stable at a momentary, and also how it happens to continue in generations without falling. Without falling means without the rūpakalāpa generation stopping. So we mentioned the stability of a rūpa is basically because of the apo and vayu, right? Apo and basically how the stability of rūpakalāpa is based on the apo and vayu, two forces which exist into different directions. Then the tejo is said to be protecting the rūpakalāpa. What do we say by protecting? Protecting is necessary mainly because of apo. Apo has a liquid quality. Apo, normally we say cohesion, the force towards inside. The liquid quality, it's a quality that, because when the patavi, the hardness is soaked in this liquid quality, what happens? There should be a certain temperature to protect it. It means the liquid quality should have another opposite sort of a quality, which is the heat or the coldness. So if suitable heat or coldness is not given, what happens? we say this hardness becomes into a very unstable state because of it's soaked in the liquidity. So we normally, in general sense, we call it gets rotten. Rotten means it comes into unstable quality. So therefore, heat is necessary for the hardness to remain in a good quality, good condition, so the generations of rūpa will continue in a healthy manner. So that is the phenomena we experience in the practical life. If we apply this phenomenon into the practical life, we see you keep the food in a refrigerator, coldness, heat. Tejo has two qualities, coldness and the heat. So this coldness, Tejo, which is the coldness, it doesn't let the patavi to rotten. The food doesn't get rotten. At the same time, some food, when it is kept under the sunshine, so it still can last for a long time. So therefore, temperature is the protector. We normally say in our literature, normally our Mahatera used to say, the protector of the world, if you want to say, tell Tejo. Another one is the creator of the life. He asked this question one time from us. Who is the creator of this world? I mentioned Tanha. He said partially correct. Creator of the animate thing is Tanha. Creator of the world is Hetu. Hetu means the cause. So likewise, the creator of the animate living beings is not a god according to the tradition. It's the Tanha. So the protector of the universe, according to the tradition, is the Tejo. So when the world is kept in a certain proper temperature, the world can sustain in a proper way. So therefore, within a rūpakalāpa, Tejo is the protector, Pata, Apo and Vayu are the reasons for the stability of the kalapa. So then we come to the next paragraph, the patavi. So patavi, among these four qualities, patavi is the most important quality among the four great elements. Why do I say so? Patavi acts as the surface because it's a hard quality. Based on this surface, the other Apo and Vayu and Tejo perform their functions based on this patavi. What do I mean by based on this patavi? It is mentioned surface. It acts as a surface or a dependence for the other three mental qualities to function. It is patavi that is heated or cooled by Tejo. Actually, Tejo heats patavi or cools the patavi. It is patavi that is cohered by Apo. Cohered means it is kept in one place. It also affects Apo, Tejo, but the main part is patavi. It is patavi that is pushed away without letting it to shrink by Vayu. Right? By Vayu, what is pushed away is the patavi. And it is due to patavi, rūpakalāpa gets the material attribute of a thing. So because of the hardness, if you think about a thing, the most important quality is the hardness. That's why we get the attribute of a thing. So even how to say in scientific ways, scientific methods, we go to the air elements, the atoms which discuss about the air like helium and so forth. They also have protons and neutrons and electrons, which also has this hard quality. So therefore, according to the Buddhist literature, patavi is the most important, conspicuous, so the prominent four elements. That's why it's mentioned in the first place. So then we go to the next paragraph. Further, it is possible to say that the shape of a kalapa is determined by the presence of Apo and Vayu. That's why I mentioned shape means it starts to exist consume a certain space because of the two forces going inside and outside. Then we come into the Tejo is the reason for the long lasting of generations. Because of protecting by Tejo, the rūpakalāpas remain in generations for a longer time. Patavi is the quality, as mentioned above. Patavi is the quality which lends the attribute which we feel when feel the gathering of material clusters as things. Right. So if we go back to the existing aspect of corporeality, four Mahabhutas remain as a cohesive unit spreading over a certain area of space, supporting each other. Such units are called rūpakalāpa. So this idea of rūpakalāpa you will never find in the canon, but this is a very logical way of interpreting the rūpa into the tiniest part. So they, based on the teachings that they found, the Theravadians came, not only Theravadians, some other doctrines or schools also came into this idea. They came into explain the rūpa to exist in clusters, units, and they call this as the rūpakalāpa. So then, next paragraph says, according to Patana, teachings found in Patana, we find Mahabhuta are supporting each other in their arising, in their persisting moment, and also they depend upon each other. When the 4 great elements thus arise together, there happens another 4 types of material qualities which are called Vanna, color, Gandha, odor, Rasa, taste, and Oja, nutriment. That is also explained in the literature. Four primary elements and of course 4 derived elements are found in every kalapa, hence are called Avinibhoga Rupa. So the Vanna, Gandha, Rasa, Oja, they say, the literature say, it is a natural outcome. Whenever the 4 qualities come together, these 4 qualities will also be present. Right? Then in addition to these 8, some kalapas contain additional corporeal elements. There are kalapas with 9 rupas, 10 rupas, 11 rupas and 12 rupas and 13 rupas. The maximum number in the Theravada literature we find is the 13 rupas. But you please keep in mind, in different traditions we have different number of rupas. So this is only on the Theravada tradition. Rūpakalāpa is a constitution of 4 great elements and derived elements. Hence is not a Paramattha Dhamma. That's a very important point. Rūpakalāpa is not a Paramattha Dhamma. Rūpakalāpa is a gathering of forces, gathering of material attributes. So Paramattha Dhamma cannot be further divided. Rūpakalāpa can be divided intellectually. So therefore, the Paramattha Dhammas are the qualities, material qualities. Rūpakalāpa is the gathering of these material qualities. So Rūpakalāpa is not a Paramattha Dhamma. Right? It's not a Paramattha Dhamma. Material things that we empirically observe are made of these tiny material units. So these Rūpakalāpas, when they come together, we observe their manner and then we call things as table, chair, a person, head, hand and so forth, right? So Buddha in a sutta found in Majjhima Nikaya, he once mentioned monks. It's written in the bold letters in that paragraph. Monks' 4 great elements are the reason for naming of the aggregate of matter. So he said, Rupa Kandasya Panyapanaya. Why do I call something Rupa Kanda? The reason is the 4 great elements. So we can also say, what is the reason for the calling something a table? Is because the 4 great elements. When they are kept in a certain manner, we call something a table or a chair. So therefore, for the naming of these things, the basic reason is, how to say, the Mahabhuta. So Panyati, at a later lecture we can discuss the Panyati is always depends. Depends means based on Paramattha. Without Paramattha, there is no Panyati. If there is no Paramattha, there is no Chitta to construct a Panyati. Right? So Panyati also depends on Paramattha. So then finally, it should be highlighted that in the ultimate sense, things such as table, chair, body and body parts are not made out of Rūpakalāpas. They are mere ideas constructed in our minds, observing the manner Rūpakalāpas are located in the space, right? So then we go into some few detailed explanations of Rūpakalāpa. Rūpakalāpas have 4 attributes. Ekupada, all the concretely produced matter in a Rūpakalāpa has the same arising, they arise together. They vanishes together, number 2. Number 3 is all the concretely produced rupa in a kalapa depend upon the 4 great elements, derived matter like Vanna, Gandha, Rasa, Oja, they depend on the 4 great elements, and the 4 great elements depend upon each other, right? So therefore they have the same dependence, eka nisaya. Then when all the concretely produced rupas in a kalapa have the same arising, same vanishing and same dependence, we call they exist together. That's called sahabuddhi, right? That is the characteristic of rūpakalāpa. The number of rūpakalāpas we find 9 kamaja kalapas, 8 utuja kalapas, 8 please correct it, chittaja kalapas, 8 chittaja kalapas and 4 utuja kalapas and 2 aharaja kalapas. Right, for aharaja kalapas. So yeah, these are the points that I want to discuss in this lecture. So I'll keep the next remaining part for the next lecture. Yeah, if you have any questions, you can ask 1 or 2. Yeah, so then we'll conclude this lecture and we'll start at 2:30.